Hello and welcome to a brand new Parry's Pickups. On this time's episode, it's all about the N64. Again, I hear you cry. Well, I can't get enough of this console. So much so I decided to buy a Japanese N64. Why, you may ask? Well, my reasoning was like this. I could buy a PAL copy of Mario Kart 64, a game I don't have, and pay upwards of £20 for just a loose cartridge. Or I could buy the Japanese version of the cartridge for a couple of quid. Of course, I do need to buy the console, so I've got to justify this purchase of a Japanese N64. And I got to thinking of how many other games are stupidly expensive, and because of that reason I don't own them physically. For example, Smash Brothers can be rather expensive. Why don't I just get a Japanese copy? Very import friendly, as is Mario Kart. So the more I thought about this, the more I thought getting a Japanese N64 would be a great idea. So I did, and this is the said N64. I also printed a little sticker there so I don't get confused, because I know I have two black N64s. Of course, if I was turning it upside down, you can see there that it is in Japanese as that goes into focus. So that's that. So what the... Oh, I'm still here. What are the other differences with the console itself? Well, there's not a lot, to be honest. The power block that goes into the back of the N64, this little thing, of course, has an extra notice on it, which I don't think is on the PAL version of the N64. So, just in case you're curious about what are the differences in how the thing looks, of course I also have to use a step-down converter like the one here. So if you are interested in a Japanese N64, do make sure you've got a step-down like this one, so you can plug it into your British power supply or wherever you happen to be. The AV cable is the official Nintendo one. Not very interesting, but it has got the composite cables, so you've got the yellow, white and red there, so I'm able to actually record gameplay footage off this console. And I am able to record the gameplay footage. Unfortunately, I could not get the picture to appear on the television screen, meaning I had to play these games I'll show you footage of with on the monitor of the computer, which had, I think, maybe about a 5-second lag on it. So throughout this gameplay footage you may see some quite embarrassing gameplay, and that is purely because I'm playing with a 5-second lag, which is rather difficult to do. So without further ado, I'll talk about some of the games I got. Now, some of these games I think you're probably very familiar with, and because there's quite a lot of them, I haven't done gameplay footage for all the games, but I'll start with a game I have done gameplay footage of, and it's from a series I'm really into at the moment, and that is Pooh Son 64. So this is a fantastic version of Pooh. Really nice. It's great that it doesn't have load times, first of all. So I've also got the Saturn version of Pooh Son, and of course that is pretty much the same, slightly different intro sequence. This isn't FMV, but it's really nicely done. It plays fantastically, you don't have to wait for anything to load. So this game was not released outside of Japan to my knowledge. A real shame. Fantastic game. It does puzzle me why they felt they couldn't release it. Maybe because these characters that are in this Pooh game weren't as familiar to Western audiences, or familiar at all, because Compile, I think who make this, had always localised their versions of Pooh and called them either Pooh Pop, or before that Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on the Mega Drive, or Kirby's Avalanche on the Super Nintendo. So they didn't feel that strongly about these Japanese characters, whereas I think they're fine, and this would have been a great game to have on the N64. Also, I'll point out that they're slightly different on the back here. It's called an Nintendo 64 cassette rather than a game pack. I just thought that was a fun little thing I never quite realised about the Japanese games. Next out of the box, trying to mix this up a little bit, this is Paper Mario, or it's so in Japan, a Mario Story. So yeah, bit of a crazy purchase this one, because the only reason I got it was because I thought I'm never going to own a physical cartridge of this game otherwise, because of the price of it. I do, however, have this on the Wii Virtual Console, so I can play it in English, and if I really want, I can plug in the physical cartridge and appreciate running on the original hardware. It's a nice thing to have. It's nice to have a sort of physical version of the game, and very affordable in Japan. Next up we have Yoshis Story. This is a game I do already own. This came in a bundle with the console. I think the console itself came with 4 games. One of them was this. The other was Mario Kart 64. As I just flick through these. The other was Kirby 64. Giving away the game right here, quite literally. And I think the last one, yeah, was Dozer, or as it's known in the West, Blastcore. But going back to Yoshi's Story, it plays as you would imagine it to play. It's reasonably accessible if you don't have the original version and want to pick up a cheap Japanese copy. Then you could play this quite easily in Japanese. It's got a very nice label there. If we get it into focus slightly, we can appreciate that. So that's that one. We'll move on to your aforementioned Kirby 64, which I think has a subtitle, but Lost Stars or something, I can't quite remember. But you'll see some gameplay footage of me really struggling with this because it was very hard to play with the lag. This one was especially. And it's a game I do have on the Wii, but again, it came with the console, very affordable price. That's a physical copy of Kirby 64. And we'll talk a little bit about why not Mario Kart 64, which is a fantastic game, and I'm really happy to finally have a copy of it, because I've been in situations where my friends have come over and we want to play with the N64. So what do you fancy playing? Oh, Mario Kart. Well, I don't have Mario Kart. I've got about everything else you might want to play, but I don't have a copy of Mario Kart. Oh, why not? Well, it's quite pricey. And funny story, my girlfriend was selling her N64, and she offered me a copy of Mario Kart for free. And I turned it down at the time because I've got it on the Wii Virtual Console. I don't need a physical copy of it. But yes, this situation kept arising where people wanted to play it with the N64 controllers on the hardware that was out and ready. And I said, well, we can play Diddy Kong Racing, which is a fine game, but this game is very... when you think N64, you think Mario 64, and you think Mario Kart 64, so it's good to finally have a copy. And something I didn't realise is Toad has a different name in Japan. He's called Kinopino, or something like that. And also, another difference in this game is on the main title. I'm sure in the N64, the PAL one, Mario Kart 64, that it says Mario Kart 64 in Mario's voice. But in this one it's Mario Kart 64! Terrible impression, do forgive me for that. But I noticed that is a little bit different about it, and if the Mushroom Cup is got a different name as well, aligning with the terminology that's used for Toad in this game. So there we go, enough of that. We'll move on to the next game in the package, which happens to be a trilogy of games that I bought as one lot on eBay for a stupidly affordable price, especially compared to how much these games go for individually in PAL versions. We have Mario Party, Mario Party 2, and lastly Mario Party 3 with wonderfully fluorescent cover. In fact, there seems to be a theme of these two at least. And of course that one was a bit more bland in its appearance. Unfortunately, we have a problem here. This game is the most corroded cartridge I've ever laid eyes on. and there's some strange green gunk going on inside there as well. I'm not sure if that's going to pick up on camera, and if I try to focus it, I shall try to focus in on that. But you might be able to see there, it is a messy looking cartridge, and I don't think it is going to work at all, and I'd rather not put it inside that N64 either, because I think it's already quite dirty inside, and I have a bit of trouble playing some of these games. And there's a slight hum, which I've never noticed, but I don't know if it's the hum of the console or the hum of the step down, so probably nothing to be concerned about. But really happy to finally have these. I think I played a bit of Mario Party 3, so I haven't got any gameplay footage of that. I didn't record any more today, but when I first got this the other day, I had a quick bash on it, and yeah, you can get into a game quite easily with no knowledge of Japanese, so that's nice to know. So there's those. And as I mentioned before, Blast Dozer, which is Blast Core. Have the game already. The game is a good game. You may not necessarily need a Japanese copy of it. Interesting how it's got a different title. But that's that. Okay. I also decided I'd try one of the popular baseball series of games here. This is a 2001 version of Cannolis' popular baseball franchise, which I totally forget the name of. There are several of these on the N64. As I was doing my research on these ones, not so much research as I worked out what the series was called, but this seemed to be the most recent, as it's 2001, so I thought this was probably the one to get. It's really interesting. I expected the characters to be rendered in 3D, whereas they were sort of like 2D. At least the batter was, and the pitcher was also 2D. And I can see the logic behind this game, totally. I can see how it plays, and it seems quite intuitive, but I could not for the life of me hit the ball when I tried to play it. So perhaps I'll come back to it, but this was more so sort of, be nice to have one of these series so I could actually experience what they were like, because we don't get these over here in the West. So at the price this was, which was a couple of quid, then I thought I'd give it a go. So another game I can't really play is Wonder Project J2. Wonder Project J2 is an adventure game, very cinematic. It's like almost like watching a Studio Ghibli film, and just a really good piece of Japanese animation. And seeing the 2D on the N64 just makes me realise how good of a 2D machine the N64 actually was. Whereas the console, doesn't have the highest resolution or the best audio, what they've done with games like this is they've really gone to show how far you could push the N64 in terms of audio and 2D graphics. Fortunately, there's a lot of reading on there. The introduction sequence is quite long, and I filmed some of that for this footage, but it seems quite bleak. It seems to me I have an idea of what happens in this game. So I think this girl is a robot. I think her creator dies, and then she and her little clockwork bird companion leave the doctor's lab, I think, which is away from civilization, to experience the outside world. They leave in a boat, they land at a port in this town. Meanwhile, there's an evil guy, an evil disembodied head, who wants to cause trouble. And that's as far as I got from the introduction of this game and playing just the very beginning. But I think it's probably a game which you could kind of muddle your way through and just really appreciate the visuals in this title, because they're really nice, and this costs nothing, practically nothing. So it's a game I've long been curious about. That's Wonder Project J2. This next game is another example of one of those expensive games, and that's Mystical Ninja 2. Very easy to pick up and play title, even if you don't have any knowledge of Japanese. I found myself being able to get into the main game quite easily, and it's a platform game with RPG-like elements. I think the platforming is more front and centre in this than it was in the last Mystical Ninja game. So really happy to have this because it does demand a high price for the PAL version, and this was I think got it for £9 Japanese version, so really good, so I can play and enjoy the game without spending lots of money. Same with this next game, which is Smash Brothers. You've guessed it, and the menus are in English. The gameplay is universal. You need no knowledge of Japanese to play it. Great to have a copy at such an affordable price. Again, this costs next to about £5 or something like that. Japanese N64 games are cheap and wonderful, so it all works out for me there. And last but not least, I decided to get a boxed Japanese N64 game. This was a game that wasn't released outside of Japan. It was based on a hugely popular anime. That anime would be, you might be able to guess already, Evangelion. Lovely box there, and it was nice to see the size of these Japanese N64 boxes. They are slightly bigger than their other counterparts. Not quite as thick, I don't think, but they go for the vertical packaging as opposed to the horizontal one. So let's look at the packaging first before I talk more about the actual game. It came in a very good condition. This is the inner box, which has, I'll be able to show you this, N64 embossed there, and this is good sturdy old plastic. You know, we got the cardboard boxes outside, for the most part at least, outside of Japan. You have a manual, for your eyes only. There's some health and safety gubbins. And this is a colour manual, and that's in very nice condition with some great images from the anime in the front there. That's that. But to my surprise, you also got something else, which is a lenticular image there on a card. It's quite thick, this is, so you get that lenticular one, and you see you also get some cards. A few cards there on the back, but this has never been opened, and there's quite a few cards in there, and this one. But I'm thinking I'm going to keep it sealed because it seems extra special, so I'm going to keep that as it is. And the actual game itself, the actual cartridge label, looks like that. It came in its original bag, I think, as well, with lovely sparkly connectors there. It's definitely been a game that's been well looked after. But what is the game itself actually like? Well, I knew it was sort of like an interactive version of the series, and it does stay very close to the series and seems to follow the events of the series chronologically. And the first thing you do is you're battling in Unit 1 as Shinji, fighting the first angel that attacks, and the gameplay is limited. You get a kind of a brief explanation of the controls. There's not a lot you can seem to be able to do, and you have to take a bit of a battering because it does follow the storyline. So when you think you may be losing, something will happen that makes sense in the grand scheme of the story. But what astounds me about this game is its presentation. It's beautiful, it seriously is, and it's rendered in 3D. There are 2D bits here and there in some of the cutscenes, but the attention to detail and the recreation of what you see in the animation is mind-blowing. They've studied the source material and recreated it using the N64's graphics in the most appropriate artistic way I could ever have imagined, really. But this presentation does limit the gameplay somewhat. You're kind of left to just pressing A to hit the angel as you attack in that first mission. Also under a time limit, and my playthrough I got reasonably far until I ran out of time. Therefore I will have to play through that a bit again to continue, but I was making some reasonable progression through the scenario, and I presume after this scenario there'll be another one another episode and it'll follow along. How the gameplay changes up after this point, I don't actually know. I've not done much research on what happened. I've seen this footage from the first mission before, and that's what convinced me to check out the game. It'd be interesting to see where it will go after that. So I really want to take this opportunity just to share some of this footage with you, and what I think I'm going to do is do a separate video of the amount of the game that I've played, just to sort of showcase how good this game looks and how true it is to the anime. But yeah, the gameplay contained within, at least at this point, seems to be lacking somewhat. And that's it, other than the really nice controller that I got with it, which just looks like a grey N64 controller, and it is, but unlike a lot of older second-hand N64 accessories, the stick is fantastic, the buttons feel like they've hardly been pressed, so this is much better condition than my N64 controller. So all in all, it was, I think, very good value. I'm sure if you went to Japan yourself and picked one of these up, you get it a little bit cheaper. I think I got 4 or 5 games with it, and all the wires and everything included. The step down I already had. It was about £60. So I thought that was good. I bought a few games on top of that. For very reasonable prices. This was about £25, so that was a little bit more, but I think that's a good price to pay for such a good condition version of Evangelion. I'm really happy with it, to be honest. Apart from that copy of Mario Party that looks a bit grubby, I will try and clean that up myself and see if I can't get that to work. But thanks for checking out this import special of Parry's Pickups. And yeah, if you're considering getting some of these games, maybe think about getting the Japanese versions and a Japanese console to play them on if you want to save yourself a bit of money, because unless you're a hardcore collector who wants to have the original PAL versions, if you just want to play the games like me on the original hardware, then this is probably the most affordable way of doing that. So there we have it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again on another Parry's Pickups. Bye for now, and game on.